Good morning everyone. Today in this video we will fight against the atmospheric of our world around us, and we will take on our plate, intellectual plate, the concept of pan-Slavianism or pan-Germanism, pan-Turkism, pan-Arabism. In my opinion, we should briefly find a common term for such terms that reflect linguistic group of nations. Panidiotism. Why all of these intellectual concepts and movements like pan-Slavianism, pan-Germanism, pan-Turkism or pan-Arabism I consider as pan-idiotism? I think one with sober mind could guess easily. Unifying nations with similar background or with similar languages, very often it comes together, like Germans, like Dutch people, like Danish people or Swedish people, so people who claim to have common Germanic roots, if not only ethnics, because we know that sometimes ethnical background is more sophisticated, but I mean linguistic or cultural roots, or like Slavic people or Turkic people or Arabic people. Some of these nations have even in vast majority common religion, like Arabic people. Yeah, there is this Shia, Sunni, and Ibadi and Alawi divisions, but in general they are almost all Islamic people, so one should say they should be united all together, construct very beautiful, powerful state that would be superpower, and they would live together happily, rule the world, or be untouchable. No one would live on their cost, and eternal happiness would come. In theory, maybe, but in practice, why it never happened? It's simple, because such nations, like now some politicians using the fact that there are clashes between Russia and Ukraine recently, since the early this year, intensified a little bit. Some politicians try to use the situation with these military clashes between Russia and Ukraine to impose a sort of a union between two states, Poland and Ukraine. Actually, this what will be left after Ukraine when this conflict ends. So it's not a good idea, because such experiments we had already in the past, not very distant past, like former Yugoslavia. So it was the union of mainly Slavic nations, at least, but not only. And their anthem started like this: Hej Sklaveni. It means Hey Slavs. Of everything was great. One Yugoslavian nation was claimed according to propaganda of the state of Yugoslavia. Hej Sklaveni. But when actually economic difficulties came, some also political difficulties came, brothers Slaveni started killing themselves with passion, and so on and so on. And for about 10 years we experienced intensified wars in different parts of Yugoslavia, known in modern historiography as Yugoslavia Wars, or divisions of Yugoslavia. And these former Sklaveni brothers, Slavic brothers, got divided into small countries, and the small countries, of course, if they are smaller, they cannot resist so much. One by one, got really ruled and occupied economically by Western powers, mainly Germany and France, and exploited. And this is how experiment Hej Sklaveni together ended up bloodily, and now actually many of them are servants, dream about work in Germany and serve Germans who also put a lot of effort, especially in terms of intelligence and money, to make their former homeland crack, and they succeeded. And Serbia is a sort of Russian satellite, but Serbian Russophilia is known for many I would say ages, not only decades. So you see how nations of former Yugoslavia ended. Some of them became economical and political colonies of the West, so mainly Germany, and Serbia became a political colony of Russia and partially economical colony of Russia and China, because there are many Chinese investments like in the steel industry. When we know how Chinese investment ends, they claim to give money to build infrastructure, but they mainly exploit resources and work for their own benefit. So this is the good example how this unification by force, ideological dampness ends. Why such pan-Slavic, pan-Germanic, pan-Turkic, pan-Arabic movements actually cannot work? It's simple. All nations have their own interest, and very often they are in the contradiction with each other, and unifying by force can work for few decades with incredible efforts to keep it together, like Yugoslavia showed. But when first better opportunity to get divided according to national interest comes, everything collapses, very often in a bloody way, and the ones who survive are very quickly later becoming dependent on the stronger neighbors. That's why all of this pan-Slavic and pan-Germanic, pan-Turkic, pan-Arabic, and other movements I would call panidiotism. I understand the reason why these movements were formed, especially in 19th century, like pan-Slavianism, because Slavic nations in vast majority, including Russia, were actually all of them were ruled or they were under the occupation of other states like Ottoman Empire, Balkans, like Austria, Prussia, later Germany, and also Austro-Hungary. So Slavic people were dreaming that that all Slavic nations should unite, because we are actually, in terms of, if we look at the linguistic groups, we are the most numerous linguistic group in Europe, so we should unite according to this theory, and under Russia we should claim our rights and go to our freedoms. But Russia never wants freedoms of the nations Russia rules, including their own, and it's also a tragic and funny at the same time contrast in this pan-Slavianistic movement, because it assumed leadership of all Slavic nations done by Russia, by Russia state. Russia should be a leading power of all Slavic nations, but Russia itself those days, until the Bolshevik Revolution, was ruled by mainly German military and political elite. So it was not Slavic elite, and they were speaking in German or in French in the Tsarish court. Almost no one knew Russian. So this is a tragic point of pan-Slavianistic movement, expressing many frustrations and inferiority feelings of many Slavic intellectuals of the 19th century, but not only 19th century. I hope that I convince you that all attempts of unifying nations that speak similar language or share similar culture or have similar origin, that unifying them by force always finishes badly, because we should follow our all national or group interests. If we are not nation, then we can achieve something. But if we want to be united with somebody by force, each side should compromise its own interest. And we know that on a longer run, it never works. Take care. Bye.